Chief Constable, thank you for joining me today to discuss the Gwent Police's most recent HMIC inspection report. I'm really pleased that you've taken the time to talk to me about the issues that really matter to our citizens here in Gwent. Before we begin and I move to my first question, perhaps you'd like to share with me your reflections on the report.
Thanks, Commissioner. Yes, I welcome HMI undertaking their recent inspection of Gwent Police. Obviously, it was taken within a window of time, and I'm pleased to report to you that there's been substantial improvements, not just made, but maintained since that inspection happened. And I think were that inspection to happen now, it would reflect us in even more of a positive light, albeit I do accept that the report did show us as a force in transition and one that's on the right trajectory. I was particularly encouraged by some of the comments from HMIC. Particularly, I'll raise a couple. One in relation to their recognition that culturally we are in a very positive place. Now, we know Gwent Police has had some high-profile, difficult issues that we've dealt with involving some of our staff, and they've been rightly dealt with effectively, and some of those individuals removed from the organisation because they don't represent our values. But what I found really, really positive was the fact that the feedback they received overwhelmingly from our staff was that our staff felt very, very clear as to what ethical standards was expected within Gwent Police. Very clear about how they would go about reporting things, not just via whistleblower or safe calls, but by overtly raising things, and that there'd be positive action off it, and also recognising the work that we are undertaking at the moment with the College of Policing and with the academic University of South Wales to carry on improving that. So I felt like that was a really good thing to recognise. And secondly, I think important to recognise the different place we are from our last HMI inspection in relation to service to the public. So for the last 18 months, we've consistently been amongst the top 5 and sometimes top 3 and sometimes top police force out of the whole 43 forces in the country in how we deal with our 999 calls, currently answering a call within 3 seconds. How we deal with our 101 calls, which historically were understandably criticised, but now on average answered within 1 minute 15 seconds, and with an incredibly low abandonment rate from the public as well. So that's really positive. I think were we to be inspected now, what we'd also see is a consistently maintained emergency and routine response attendance of incidents well over 80%, so well above our targets. So I think the recognition from the HMIC that we are undertaking these improvements is very welcomed. Specifically in relation to the fairness, I think it's difficult to argue against figures. I think the window of time that the HMI were inspecting at the time, some of those figures show that we can carry on improving in certain areas, and we can expand on some of those, I'm sure, with some of your questions. But I think in relation to the grading maybe of leadership, then I feel that there are some things that were found as areas for improvement that you would understand of an organisation going through considerable change. I see it better than what that grading actually had it as.
Thank you for that. And I share your disappointment in that grading because I've seen significant positive progress in relation to that. But I do recognise that an inspection is undertaken at a point in time. And of course, the inspectors can only make a judgment based on the evidence that they have available to them at that point in time. And I think we all understand that. And I'm confident that the public will understand that as well. So if you don't mind then, Chief Constable, we'll move on to my first question. I'd like to start really by asking you your views on the report. Clearly, it's an improvement from your previous inspection report, which is to be welcomed, I would suggest. And it does suggest that things are moving in the right direction here in Gwent. I'd like to ask you, Chief Constable, do you think the Peel report is a fair reflection of Gwent Police at the moment?
Thanks, Commissioner. So I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the HMIC report in a bit of detail, really. We welcomed the HMIC coming in to conduct the inspection. I think, as you've already alluded to, we've definitely seen progress since the last time that they came to inspect us in multitude of areas, and I'll expand on that shortly. In relation to the question of it being fair, I think it was based on the sets of data during the inspection period that they were given. It found us in some areas requiring some improvements, and I'll expand on some of the plans in relation to some of those areas. Equally so, it was a window of time, and what I'm really pleased to inform you is that post that inspection, for a sustained period, the force has gone on to improve and maintain a higher performance in a number of those areas that were inspected. So I don't dispute the findings of HMI. I think they are possibly on the adequate side as opposed to the good, which I think an inspection of us right now would find us in a multitude of those areas. And I think that is encouraging. There is an area in there that I felt the grading was a bit harsh, and I can expand on that somewhat as well. But I think overall, I think it's a relatively fair on what the inspectorate saw at the time, and I'm really pleased with some of the narrative, which I'd like to focus on as well, where the inspectorate really recognised that we were a force in transit and the trajectory that we are on as an organisation. We've had a lot of change since the turn of the year, not just in our leadership team, but also in our strategy, our mission, our vision, our operating model, and our governance boards. A lot of change for the organisation, but change which was required, change that is getting us ready for policing of Gwent in the future, and one that I think they'll see us continue to improve.
Thank you for that. And you make an important point there. When the inspection is undertaken, obviously it's at a certain point in time, so it's focused on the evidence that's available at the time. And as you rightly say, progress has been made since the inspection itself. One of the points that I'd like to make about the report is what I found very welcome about it was the language that is used by the inspectorate within the report. So very often we see the term encouraging, which suggests to me, and I would suggest to the citizens that we serve, that this is the case, that actually the positive progress is being made. So I would recommend to anybody who's interested to actually read the report, because the language in it is positive in parts, isn't it? And just on that positivity, we're all really pleased, and I'm sure you must be too, that in terms of crime data integrity, to receive an outstanding categorisation within that is superb, really, and a reflection of all the hard work that's gone on here in Gwent. It's been a long-standing issue, obviously. How do you feel, what is it that you've done as a force that has enabled you to achieve this outstanding?
Thanks, Commissioner. I think, as you've alluded to there, very, very pleased with receiving that outstanding. It's not something that forces get without very much deserving it. And I think the figures, if we just start with the figures themselves, to be consistently over 96% of crime data integrity, accuracy and promptness and timeliness is very encouraging. As encouraging as that is the types of offences as well, serious sexual offences being crimed accordingly, so vulnerability really being addressed in those areas. So really pleased to see that. So we've changed, I think it's fair to say, where we were a few years ago when we were last inspected on our crime data integrity. We've got a number of officers who have responsibility for doing those dip samples and checks on all crimes, and our crime data registrar and her team have worked really, really actively and avidly across the whole of the organisation to make sure we're doing things correctly, linking in with national best practice. But it's not just been, it doesn't just stop there. That team have worked brilliantly, but what I find really encouraging is that ethical crime recording in a prompt nature has been adopted by our workforce. So our workforce understand that they are to be victim focused in relation to that prompt criming, seeing what they see when they arrive at a scene, and then basically investigating that as a result afterwards. But I think it's really reassuring to have a high grading in that, because it really speaks volumes about the ethical nature of our workforce and what they deal with.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it evidences really the work that's been undertaken in terms of building trust and confidence, because the citizens that we serve here in Gwent can have confidence that when a crime is reported, it is being accurately recorded and acted upon. So that's a real positive, isn't it? So the report highlights, in terms of leadership and force management, a lot of the changes that have gone on within the organisation. And I have to say that I would dispute the categorisation in terms of leadership and management, because the progress that I've seen in relation to that and the changes that have been implemented are really positive, and I'd like to assure the citizens of Gwent in relation to that. But clearly there has been a lot of change. Just reflecting on the changes that have been implemented, do you think that the tools that you use as a leadership team within the force are achieving what you need to achieve in relation to the wider workforce? Because the report does touch on that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think I probably share your disappointment in relation to the grading on leadership, and that was the area that I did refer to earlier on, because the requiring improvement status is not what I see on a daily basis. And I think the narrative of what HMICFRS's report has expanded on does show quite a lot of the emerging work that we've really gone about doing within Gwent Police. I've got a leadership team who I see on a daily basis, who are strongly committed, got great values, really want to be serving the public, looking after the workforce as well, to ensure that they're best equipped to be able to do that well. They're motivated, they're caring, they're connected. They've got all of those attributes that you'd want to see from a leadership team. I see a leadership team of officers who are working together as one police force, with a united way of approaching things, rather than just doing things on a geographical or a silo or a departmental basis. So what I'd say is I think we're very much a force that's going in the right direction in relation to that. I think some of HMIC's concerns that they had at the time of writing the report were in relation to such an amount of change and how that was going to be communicated effectively throughout our organisation. Now, it's fair that at the start of the year there was a substantial amount of change. New executive management, new chief constable, new mission, vision, chief constable's delivery plan to follow your own criminal justice plan, and a new level of governance and operating model is a substantial amount of change. But I wanted to make sure that the force was ready, not just for dealing with today's issues, but for projecting what was likely and predictable for the future. So future-proofing our organisation to be ready for those threats and risks and to provide the very best service is absolutely imperative. Now, getting that communication across an organisation over 3,000 people, you've got to approach that in a multitude of different ways. Strong communication and internal communication, strong consistent meetings with clarity from your leadership teams. And they're all things that I feel are definitely landing and being worked on. But communicating that change, it's a constant. It's something that I've got to keep doing myself to my own team so that they can mirror those behaviours as well, because everyone needs to understand how they contribute towards improving trust and confidence in Gwent Police. That is the strapline for every member of staff within Gwent Police. Improving trust and confidence in Gwent Police. It starts within the organisation, with the staff feeling valued, connected with an employer voice, and going and speaking to their family and friends about feeling valued within their workplace. And that then also goes out into the way that they deal with the public. And in turn, I very much hope that the public get that satisfaction level and that expected golden service that they want from their force.
Thank you for that, Chief Constable. And just turning to the report itself, one of the issues that the report highlights is the way that victims are served here in Gwent. And the report actually touches on some concerns around the supervision of investigations and keeping victims regularly updated. I'm sure the public and here in Gwent would really like to better understand what the key issues are that impact on that performance and what you're going to do about that in future.
Absolutely. So I want us as a force to be a victim-orientated organisation focused on providing the best service we can. Now, if I can stop people being victims in the first place, that's my ultimate objective. And by having that strong neighbourhood presence and visibility, and also a good response from officers when they're called, if we can stop people being victims, then obviously that's the biggest thing. But when people are unfortunate enough to be victims of crime, I want them to have an exceptional service. Now, it's fair to say that our victim feedback is checkered. Some of our victims who've been dealt with by specialised victims hubs provide very, very good service. Provide very good feedback, sorry. Our victim feedback in general is that often people feel that they were dealt with very well at the point, at the scene when they actually reported something or when an officer first attended, but that service tailored off a little bit. And to explain that a little bit, I think it's important to understand maybe what I see from policing, from working with the front line for over 30 years and still being connected to them now. Police officers generally sometimes feel that victims only want to hear updates that their crimes have been detected, that someone's been arrested, or they've got their property back. But what academic research and local community conversations have shown is that actually people don't always just get satisfied by that alone. Now, obviously, that's what they'd like, but they want to know what the police have done since that first time that they had contact with them. So informing them of the extensive work that had been undertaken, which I see on a regular basis, you know, house-to-house inquiries, CCTV inquiries, forensic submissions, online investigations, speaking to people who provide information and intelligence. A lot of different things go on, and victims want to hear that they've had that service, even if it hasn't led to one of those 3 desirable outcomes that I said at the offset. So we've got to get better at updating people about what we've done. That comes in a change of culture, and that's something that my leadership teams are very much focused on, making sure that our staff really adopt that. We are improving our stance in relation to your other question on investigations in general. So looking at investigations, I'm introducing an investigatory quality framework, which will have 6 touch points, which will have a senior leader on each of those touch points responsible. They include victims, timeliness, effectiveness, risk assessment, suspect management, and they basically are headed by individuals. And and there'll be a framework there where people are held to account and responsible for different areas of investigation, and will be met with regularly to give updates on us improving in those positions. So a combination of those things are going to really improve our victim service, and also I'm very alive to whatever future opportunities there may well be in the future to assist us, obviously being respectful to victims' preferred method of contact, but it may well be in an ever-emerging digital society that there's technology that can assist us in improving some of this victim care as well, and I'm open-minded as to what that looks like too.
Thank you for that, Chief Constable. And I think it's really clear from the information that you've provided there that you've got some clear actions and plans in place in order to address the issues that were raised in relation to that. And that's very welcome, and I'm sure that the people in Gwent will welcome that too. I'd like to move to the issue of vulnerability and the issue of protecting vulnerable people. And as you know, protecting and supporting vulnerable people is a priority in my police crime and justice plan. Just considering this and some of the issues that are highlighted in the inspection report itself. So, for example, the report highlights that sometimes there were, during the period of inspection, there was evidence of a lack of attendance at some strategic discussions around child protection. Have you put in any urgent changes to address that?
Absolutely. So again, another similar to the investigations plan I just talked to you about, I've appointed our superintendent who's responsible for public protection matters to redesigning and revising a fit for purpose vulnerability strategy, a new terms of reference and a number of task and finish groups over the particular areas for improvement that the inspection report have put together. Now, some of those areas include important issues for yourself and your crime and justice plan and my delivery plan too. And they would definitely include the way that we deal with safeguarding matters, the way that we have a trained and equipped workforce to deal with safeguarding. And when I say that, I don't mean just the niche officers who are particularly tasked with investigating safeguarding offences, but actually the wider workforce in recognising it. So really looking at our training on a wider level, looking at our disclosure procedures and making sure that we're fit for purpose with that as well, and addressing backlogs, and also bringing in some specialised members of staff to recognise vulnerability in different ways, whether that be through civil orders or stalking and harassment protection orders, specialised officers to assist with that. And going back to your question, really making sure that key meetings which need representation from the right people at Gwent Police have got them to do those strategic risk assessments effectively. But there's a bit of that being a team directive, really, because it's not just policing alone that has to do that. That has to be our partners too. And we've got good working relationships across Gwent with our public service partners. So all of us making sure we've got appropriate representation at these meetings is essential to be able to provide that rich picture and for people to pick up actions that are attributable to their own organisation to make sure that safeguarding is a real priority for people, and vulnerable people are looked after throughout Gwent.
I really welcome that response. It's good to hear that, and we do have really positive partnerships with our public sector partners here in Gwent. But the overall message that I get from you in relation to that, Chief Constable, is that safeguarding really is everybody's responsibility.
Absolutely.
And that's the message that we clearly want to ensure that the public understand as well.
Definitely.
I'd like to move on to preventing crime and antisocial behaviour. Now, the report does cover this, and antisocial behaviour, as we've discussed many times, is an issue that can blight our communities and really blight the lives of families and individuals within those communities. So I'm really interested to better understand your views in terms of the new neighbourhood policing strategy and operating model that you've implemented. Do you think this will deliver the improvements required in relation to preventing crime and antisocial behaviour?
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm really optimistic that we've got a really strong, well thought out and committed approach to tackling antisocial behaviour with Gwent. Like you, I go out to community council meetings and I hear the top concerns of local residents and stakeholders, and antisocial behaviour and specific things to do with antisocial behaviour as well, such as off-road biking, consistently come through as something which is one of their top 3 concerns in all areas of Gwent. So as a force, you know that I have to meet HMICFRS requirements and the Home Office objectives, but equally so, never at the detriment of providing local service to local communities of what the police service they want. And antisocial behaviour is exactly what they want. I come from a background of a strong neighbourhood focus, a community's first sergeant many years ago, and I've seen the success that investing real time in local communities can bring to making a sustained high impact difference to people's livelihoods and the quality of their everyday experience. So with that in mind, with also the ability of the Home Office investment in neighbourhood policing, we've taken a strong stance in investing on neighbourhood. making sure that our neighbourhood roles are all filled, making sure that on top of that, we've invested in community action teams that have got an ability as a number of assets, an inspector, 2 sergeants, 16 PCs, and 10 PCSOs dedicated on top of neighbourhood teams to the top 4 areas of Gwent Police which are suffering with neighbourhood issues of concern to those local communities, including antisocial behaviour. And that strong visibility is already providing us with some great results, and we're having really good feedback from some of those areas that have had community action teams in there, bolstering their neighbourhood officers already on what they've experienced and addressing these issues. As a force, we've also applied to the Home Office for additional funding for something called Operation Lockwood, which is a follow-up to last year's Operation Lumley, which was basically where the force receives £1 million to specifically address antisocial behaviour in the top 7 hotspots within the force area. And this is by having additional officers on foot in those areas at key times, well thought out, using analytical data as well as feedback from the communities about what areas could most benefit. Now, last year we were able to provide 7,000 additional officer hours within those areas. This year we will provide an additional 9,000 hours within those areas, and last year we saw all of those areas reduce in antisocial behaviour, and I'm very much hopeful that we're going to see exactly the same for that this year. It is not something that is a flash in the pan. It is not something that is a week of action. It's something I'm strongly committed to, something that I see as a big priority as my job as Chief Constable. I really hear what people say about visibility and seeing people and seeing officers out on the street. And I get the fact that we've got a lot of competing demands and emerging crimes, but this is something that we've got to maintain to keep that trust and confidence of our people.
Thank you for that, Chief Constable. And I have to say that very recently I had some feedback from Caldicott Town Council on the successes of the operation last year. So really positive feedback. And for me, that's strong evidence about how this approach really works in our communities. And I do welcome that. And I'm really pleased to see that positive performance as well. So
as you mentioned, Caldicott, Tricia, they are a success story. Last year, we reduced crime by 25% and antisocial behaviour by 31% in Caldicott compared to the year before. So, I'm pleased to hear that the communities have fed that back to you, because that is a good drop, and we want to sustain that and keep that going.
And it's great to have that evidence base, isn't it? Which will really help when it comes to the next inspection as well. So building that evidence up all the time is really important. So just on that subject, I'd like to draw this session to an end, but we'll continue to work on this. We'll continue to scrutinise your performance, and we'll come back together when we've got more evidence on this, and I will challenge you once again. But for today, Chief Constable, thank you very much for meeting with me to discuss these issues that really matter to the people here in Gwent.
Thanks, Commissioner.